Welcome to Table Salt. We are doing week 2 of The Future Is Ours. We're so glad that you are here. Today we are joined by Pastor Jeremy Fisher.
Yes, so excited to be here.
Jeremy, what is this sermon about?
Listen, if I could put it in a tweetable little nutshell here, it's the thought that there's just no prison that you find yourself in that Christ can't free you from.
Yeah, so I think this whole series has been pretty controversial.
Controversial?
Yeah. Yeah, see, you guys sit and you write this stuff, and it doesn't feel...
That sounds like...
It doesn't feel provocative to you, but you guys are our pastors, and so, like, when you say something... Like, we're making decisions about our life after that.
Yeah.
Because if you guys tell us something and it's just like, oh, well, then we should do better. So with week 1, you were talking about how you make decisions. Like, if you want to focus on the future, then those decisions that you make will determine what your future is.
Right.
And so this kind of like piggybacks off that in more of a grace situation, because ultimately when we think about the things that hold us back, it's all the things that we're telling ourselves.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so what's so provocative, the reason I say it's controversial, like it feels like nothing to you, but like you're shattering paradigms over here.
I see what you're saying. And that's so true. Like, I don't know if this would be the story for Rocky, but when I look at Jeremy Fisher's life and I think about the enemies along the way, kind of the one enemy that keeps showing up over and over and over and over is me. Yeah. Like, I am a 100% like statistical participant in every one of my bad decisions. Right? Like, I was there for every single one. Not somebody else's fault, but my fault. Me.
Right.
Yeah.
But how much of that is like because of who you think that you are, like your self-identity, your whatever? How much of it is like, I am this way because this thing happened to me. I am this way because God chose my parents for me.
Yeah.
And see, this is what I'm saying. Like, you guys write these sermons.
I know. It's no big deal to you.
But like, you've literally confronted all of these things, and you say, well, in Christ, we're pushing that aside. It's not holding us back anymore.
Yeah. To answer your question, I think for me personally, when I think about like the dysfunctional areas of my life, sin struggles, I think a lot of it goes back to, or at least I can point a lot of it back to, like, what happened to me, how I was raised, what my upbringing was, the things I was taught growing up, the things I saw. I can do that, and I can use that as like the justification for the why behind those things.
Yeah. And
just resolve myself a lot of times to, it's not going to get any better. Like, this is
as good as it gets.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
And when, this message this week, there's a portion where we talk about Luke 4, where we're speaking about Jesus freeing the captives. And that's true in the spiritual sense, right? Like, he's going to bring us from death to life. We have heaven waiting for us someday. But I think that there's like present benefit today. That's like stuff that holds you down and has kept you in captivity doesn't have the bondage over you anymore that you think it does.
Right.
So all the things that I have grown up saying about myself, I'll always be this, I'll always be that. Like, do you have that broken record in your head?
No.
I do. I mean, it plays on repeat, dude.
No, but I think, okay, so, we're talking a lot about the past. And so, I think that God has done a great job in giving me mentors and therapists and all of the work to help me not feel victimized by my past.
Yeah.
Because in my specific set of circumstances, a lot of those things were things that were done to me. And so it felt very much out of my control. And God has redeemed that. But there are a couple of other ways that this plays out in people's lives. Yeah. One is, like, I made bad decisions. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic. I was an abuser. I was all of those things, and it keeps me from having any sort of solid foundation. I'm just a piece of garbage.
I could never be because whatever.
Yeah, and then the other part of that I think people would have to overcome is that I can't make different choices now because I'm 45 years old, and this is what my life is now, and I'm not 20 years old anymore. I can't start over. I have to let go of the dreams. I have to, and where's the wisdom in that? And all of those things feel like slavery, whether it's your past or whether it's your choices or whether it's just your current circumstances.
Yeah. You made me think of something just now when my daughter, so our first child, when she was growing up, she started out in this little it's like a crib. And every morning when she'd wake up, we would hear her, she kind of be babbling, Daddy, Mommy. She couldn't get out, she's calling for us to come get her out of her bed because she's physically incapable of getting out of that crib. Well, she grew up a little bit, and we got her a big girl bed a little while later, and the sides of the bed were removed. And I remember the conversation the night we put her to bed is I told Megan, I'm nervous about when she gets up in the morning because she's going to go rooting around in that bedroom. She's going to make a mess of it. She's going to go downstairs. She's going to get in the pantry, whatever, And the next morning when we woke up, I could hear from her room, Daddy, Mommy. And, she laid in that bed.
Oh, yeah.
Because she thought she couldn't get out.
Huh.
And no.
That's crazy.
She had, it's a green light.
Yeah.
It's like open access. Go. You do it. But she thought that she was a prisoner.
Yeah.
And it was that thought that kept her there. Man, this is I feel, I don't want to get too preachy on the podcast right now, but
yeah, sermon's over, buddy.
Yeah, the sermon's over. But this is something I feel so passionate about because I have lived this, and I've constantly lived it, is that you just don't have to be whatever that narrative is in your head.
Right.
You don't have to be that anxious. You don't have to be that depressed. You don't have to be in that sin struggle. You don't have to be in that addiction. You don't have to be that. Christ has something better.
So what is the Luke 4 verse again?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's just, he came to give freedom to the captives.
And so I guess in a lot of ways, we don't see those things that are holding us captive. So much of the verbiage that we use just in Christendom and church culture will say oh, you're a slave to sin.
Yeah.
You're a slave to, but through this series, I think part of what we're learning is actually, not only have you been a slave to sin, but you've been a slave to your thought process.
Oh yeah.
You believed things about yourself and about God that have enslaved you.
Yes. And God has a better word, better things for you to believe about yourself, your story, the place you find yourself in life. Just, it reminds me of that moment, I think it's Judges 6, angel comes down to Gideon. Mm-hmm. And Gideon is threshing wheat in the bottom of this wine press, hiding from this enemy army that's out there. He's fearful, he's scared, and the angel shows up as a messenger from God, and the first thing the angel says is, "Mighty warrior." And Gideon turns around and he's like, "Mighty warrior?"
Yeah.
I'm here in the wine press, afraid of what's going to happen to me. But I love it that God saw something within Gideon that Gideon didn't even know for himself. God knew the rest of the story here, who he could become, who he would become. I think that's true for each of us, man. Within Jesus, God has a better story for all of us than whatever that broken record is in our head. And again, I just say that as a victim.
Yeah.
As somebody who has lived the broken record thing over and over and over.
Is there a sense where there has to be wisdom? Because immediately, because I'm such a pessimist. Do you know what I mean? I'm I'm so tainted by the world. Don't judge me. But I'm just saying, realistically, I don't want somebody to walk away from this and say, oh, I've had limiting beliefs that I have to stay in this marriage that makes me miserable. Uh-huh. And so Christ has freed me from the captivity of that lying thought. Yeah. So I just get to leave my spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is certainly some, like, you can twist the arm of this sort of thing to give it whatever justification that you want for things. I guess what I'm speaking to is just the general sense of hope for the future. That's like, wherever place you found yourself, if you've just resigned yourself to, this is how it always has to be, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. That's, and that's like, this is, again, it goes back to that whole thing. 'Cause I don't know if I'm listening to you and I'm listening to the sermon and I choose to believe, like, the salvation of Christ doesn't just speak to my eternity. Salvation of Christ speaks to the way that I get to live my life. And that suddenly I'm so much more than just the things I've done or my circumstances. So many times I think we use those things as excuses because they're comfortable and safe. And suddenly you're removing that, and now what?
Yeah.
Now, like, I have to try, and disappointment is like a real thing that could actually happen to me. And it's completely my fault if it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Like, this is what we talk about, like, when we say somebody's a new creation in Christ, and then they, like, okay, you put your faith in Jesus, but then you keep screwing up after that. Like, what gives? I thought I was a new creation. And that's true, you are. But, a lot of times you can still walk back into that old prison without bars. You can still think of yourself in those old ways. Doesn't mean you're not free, right? Doesn't mean you're not new. It just means you're breaking off those old patterns, So it is at once an instantaneous thing. It's an already not yet. Like, I feel that a lot about so many different things in the scriptures. He has freed me from my sin, but maybe I don't get to feel the ultimate completion of that until a further day.
Yeah. How long have you been a pastor?
This is year 10.
10. So 10 years of ministry, working in church, working with people, being a spiritual leader to people. What are some of the most common slave enduring, like, captive thought processes or things that we believe about ourselves or about God? I know that's a big question. I should have probably.
No, that's a really great thought.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say this. Can I speak directly to this here? Things as simple as my finances are always going to be jacked up because I'm just not a disciplined person when it comes to my finances. I think if you turn your finances over to the Lord, commit to spending in wisdom, watch what God does with that sort of thing. You found yourself in a place that's like, and for me, my sin for the time that I was in my 20s was lust and pornography. Felt enslaved by it until I was about 24 years old. And I one day woke up and thought, I can't do this anymore. This is not something that I can do and be married, be a pastor, be committed. And I'm just here to tell you right now, you can find freedom. You don't have to be bound by that sort of thing. Somebody that's struggling with something as common as, like, anxiety, where you feel hopelessness towards the future and don't know what to do. I think God has a better plan with the way that you run your thoughts and the things that you're thinking and the things that you've been wrestling with. I think if you commit all these things to the Lord, He's got something better in store for you.
And Christ offers us freedom in that we no longer have to be bound to those things, even if it feels impossible.
Yeah, even if it feels impossible. I know that's probably the biggest difficulty with me, is that there are some days I just don't feel it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you always will.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, I appreciate your time.
Man, I'm glad to be here. I love it.
Yeah. Well, we love having you. Thank you guys for joining us today. I don't know what God is doing in your life right now. I hope that you feel challenged. I know that it can be a little scary when your pastors are telling you, hey, I know that you think that these are all the limiting things in your life, but the work of Christ doesn't just speak to that eternity, but it speaks to your life right now. You have freedom today, and you can live without excuse today. You can experience freedom in all of those things that you've been struggling with that you feel like have been holding you back. And this can be the greatest year ever And that might terrify you. It might really encourage you. If you're using this in the CG, that's a great thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Great way to encourage each other, maybe create some accountable relationships. If you just caught us online and you need to have a conversation about this, reach out to us. You can text Sea Life Connect to 31996. Set up a Zoom call with me, face-to-face, in person. You're never alone on this journey. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.